This doesn't appear as if it's going live.
You
Hopefully.
are. You're on. I can see it on Twitter.
We're on at the moment. Oh my goodness, that's a bit weird. It says in StreamYard that we're not live. So that's a bit daft. That was a strange start to the situation, a funny start to 2023, but it's not about what you do. It's about how you react to what you do, isn't it? Why is StreamYard not telling me that we're actually live here? Okay, this is very strange. Crystal, Dre are going to be our guests today. We're going to have a wonderful show about setting your SEO strategy for 2023. Oh, the wonderful panelists. Would you mind checking that we are actually live on YouTube as well? I just want to make sure that we are live on YouTube as well. And if we're live on YouTube, then we're going to rock and roll and we're going to get going with things properly.
I'm opening up YouTube.
We're going to have one other guest joining us as well in a second. It's running a little bit late.
I've got us live on YouTube.
Can I get on YouTube?
Have we got some folks on the thing? So it says we've got 2 viewers on the thing. And then if we got anyone on the YouTube who can just shoot us a little comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Majestic saying we're live. Okay. That was a funny start to the
Thank you,
situation.
Majestic.
So we've got the team at Majestic HQ saying we're certainly live just now. We've got my software saying that we're not live, but I'll believe people if they're actually commenting and saying that we're actually live. So let me just do the proper start for the situation, and then I'll introduce the panelists, and then after that, hopefully the third panelists will be here as well. So how to set your SEO strategy for 2020. How to set your SEO strategy for 2023 with Crystal Carter, Maria White, and Dre Vera. Hey, it's David, and welcome to the Majestic SEO Podcast, episode 36. Diving into the specifics of how to set your SEO strategy for 2023 with 3 great panelists. Now, as Dixon mentioned in the previous episode, he's moving on from helping Majestic in this way as a host to other ways. So I'm going to be hosting this show now, and for the coming year, we're going to be focusing on what you need to do to drive SEO success in 2023. And to do that, Majestic are offering you 2 different podcasts that you can subscribe to. So firstly, SEO in 2023. That's a podcast series that works with the book SEO in 2023. Find out more about that, funnily enough, over at SEOin2023.com. And this show as well, the Majestic SEO Podcast, aka Ogard versus New Blood, which will continue to offer a monthly discussion panel and offer as well different tips on a weekly basis. So SEO tips that support the SEO in 2023 series as well. You'll see as we go along. Now, as I mentioned in this episode 36 of Majestic SEO Podcast, we're going to be looking at how to set your SEO strategy for 2023 with 3 wonderful panelists. So without any further ado, let's get them on here. Panelists number 1. What's your name and where do you come from?
My name is Crystal Carter. I am the head of SEO communications at Wix. I am based in the UK, but I am a California girl at heart. And I'm really pleased to be here talking about SEO strategy. In my previous role, I was a digital strategist, and I think strategically all the time about lots of different SEO tactics. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah, I'm really pleased to talk about this today.
Superb. Sounds like a great relevant panelist to have in this particular discussion. Thanks for joining us, Crystal. And next up, who is panelist number 2 and where do you come from?
Hey, happy new year, happy 2023. My name is Paul Andre de Vera, aka Dre, and I am the host and producer of the SEO video show and an enterprise SEO consultant that worked at companies that have Workday, SAP, SuccessFactors, and Anaplan. So I'm here to help you get you started in 2023.
Superb, and wonderful to have your dulcet tones joining us today, Dre. And thanks so much for getting up so early, considering that you're on the west coast of the USA. I appreciate you coming on there. And lastly, but not least, Maria had a couple of issues just joining us bang on time, but you've turned up now. So it's great to have you on. I said your name, so you can introduce your full name and let us know where you come from. So panelist number 3, what's your name and where do you come from? I thought that might happen. That always happens without a test beforehand, doesn't it? So, Maria, you're muted just now. So perhaps you could actually just have a look at your microphone. I see it's the Samsung QTU microphone that you're using. So perhaps feel free to leave and come back. Just 1 second, she says. We've got Razzle in the chat saying, unusual to watch Dre without special effects. Perhaps he might actually offer you a few later on. He's just got his fingers on the post there, just waiting to go. There we go. We've got some special effects flying away there. I knew that you just couldn't resist it there. We've got Maria just heading off for a second there and hopefully coming back. I'm sure she will be back in a second. So what we're going to be doing is, instead of just talking about SEO tactics, so I think many SEOs can default into talking about tactics, and that's not great thing when you're considering strategy. So let's be specific about what we're talking about today. So focusing in on 3 key areas. So number 1, what do SEOs need to know about the business that they're working in general before starting to build an SEO strategy? Number 2, what conversations do SEOs need to have with marketing leaders before starting to build an SEO strategy? And then number 3, moving on to then, after all that, laying out an SEO strategy and how to incorporate that SEO strategy together for 2023. So let's go back to panelist number 1, Crystal. So Crystal, what do SEOs need to know about the business that they're working in general before thinking about building an SEO strategy?
So generally with SEO, you're either working on your own project, or you're working or you're working on behalf of clients, or you're working on behalf of a project. Say, for instance, where you're working in-house and you're either working on one part of the website or you're working on the whole website, and you maybe have a strategic goal that you're thinking about. And when you're doing that, it's really important that you understand what metrics the business will use in order to understand whether or not it's been effective. So just saying traffic for the sake of traffic doesn't always do the job. And SEOs can pat themselves on the back about impressions or traffic or views and those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't translate into a metric that is valuable to the business, then and to the business operations, then that's going to make it very difficult for the wider team to justify your SEO activities. It's also going to make it more difficult for them to continue to pay for your activities in whichever way that might be. So it's very important to understand what that might be. And now that could be sales, it could be leads, it could be signups for a certain thing, but something that contributes to their funnel and eventually leads to money. Normally is the thing. So it's important to understand what metrics they have and whether or not they're valuable, and also whether or not they're measuring the right things. I've had it before where I've had clients where they were like, "Oh, we want to get this metric," and I was like, "But does that actually contribute to the bottom line?" And they were like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, if it doesn't, I have this metric that seems like it does, so we can keep an eye on that. But this one seems to be actually more valuable to us overall." It can be trickier with bigger projects because sometimes there's a longer lead time, but I think understanding what matters to the business is absolutely crucial.
So metrics, absolutely key, but I love your use of the word projects as well, because especially working in a larger organization, I think it's easy for SEOs to maybe identify what they think are opportunities, but they're not necessarily opportunities that are the most important to the business at that moment in time or over the coming year. So identify the project that is key will obviously bring you more love from other departments within the business as well. Maria, can we hear you okay? No, we can't. No, we're struggling to hear Maria a little bit there as well. So I'm not sure if Maria, I don't think you're unmuted, Maria. I think it's just a case of selecting the microphone. 1 minute, try that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Oh.
It was as simple as a little button on the side of the microphone. So if you can possibly get the microphone just slightly closer,
Right.
just to hear you
Getting closer.
in
Is that better?
greater
Brilliant.
gain. That's
Brilliant.
wonderful.
Thank you for
So I
having me, and
said your name,
apologies
Maria
for the
White.
delay.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, Maria, thanks for joining us.
Right.
Let the listener know a little bit about yourself just before getting started, if that's okay.
Right. Thank you for having me. My name is Maria White, and I am head of SEO at Core Geiger. It's a luxury retailer brand, British brand with luxury concessions around the world. I am responsible for everything organic for SEO. I work very closely with the marketing department, the PR department, and the engineering department, which is key for the SEO strategy for the strategy to be successful. So yeah, that's pretty much me, quick in a nutshell. And yeah, let's crack on.
Wonderful, indeed. Yes. Okay. So Crystal's just answered the question from her perspective in terms of what's more important in terms of the conversation that SEOs need to be having with the business in general before even thinking about SEO strategy? So I'll get your thoughts on that just in a second, Maria, but let's go to Dre. And so Dre, what are your thoughts on that particular question?
I'm going to take this to a kind of different angle, because let's say you're starting with a new client, you're starting a new job with a new company, right? So the first thing you really want to do is understand the product. You want to understand the features, so you actually know what you're going to be actually optimizing for. I mean, you need to understand the audience. You need to make sure and see if it's a two-way marketplace. Are you going to optimize for event marketers and event attendees? So you're looking at like two different things you need to actually optimize for. So taking a step back and really analyzing the business itself with the product, the features, and the audience is something where you should really get started on before you get your SEO strategy going.
Superb, superb. It's funny, my immediate reaction is start to thinking about SEO tactics. I'm sure many SEOs are similar, because I immediately think, okay, well, if we're thinking about the audience, how do we actually match keyword phrases to audiences? And I have questions like that, but I don't want to quite go down that route yet. It was interesting that you also mentioned the word product, and that seems to be absolutely key. Maria, what are your thoughts in terms of the conversations that SEOs need to be having with leaders in the business before proceeding with that SEO strategy?
Right. First of all, one of the key aspects is to understand the niche as much as you can. If you understand the niche, then everything would be much easier. So my advice would be, before you start an SEO strategy, or if you just got a new client, is to, if you can and if you have the time, is log yourself for about a week, or get some time to understand fully the niche. That will give you understanding to other key areas, such as competitors, target audience, and you would understand much easier the wider objectives of the organization. Because if you work in-house, especially for a large brand, sometimes SEO is just one component of the main objectives, especially when you have, like in our case, we have stores, we have D2C, B2B, we have several channels, pillars within the whole strategy. So SEO, although it is one part, it is not obviously the minor or the least important. But I would say understanding the niche as much as you can, if you can, as an expert level, would give you ability to understand objectives and hold conversations with other teams, such as, in my case, PR, marketing, and engineering, and be able to get your strategy, the message, or what you want to convey or you want to implement across every department. Some departments are more challenging than others, but yeah, I would say, yeah.
Okay, so what we're hearing so far is understand the product, understand the niche, understand the metrics. Let's go around everyone just once more on this particular section of the conversation. And actually, I want to ask you, if someone has started a new role within an organization, or maybe kind of started brand new in an organization as a head of SEO, fairly big company, what job titles should you be seeking out to have a conversation with, into understanding more about the product, more about the niche, more about where the business is going? Crystal, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, that's an interesting one. So I think that it's important to think about who will be, and I'm thinking very tactically here, but like, who's signing off the strategy, because the strategy needs to be signed off. Who's going to be involved with the strategy? Certainly, whenever you're thinking about and like which team is actually going to have to be implementing it. So Maria talked about working across lots of different teams when you're working in a big organization. That happens with smaller organizations as well, and it might be that it's one person that where you're like, oh, we need to do this and we need to do that, and there's like, that's Susan. Susan does all of those things, and she doesn't have time to do that and answer the phones and make the coffee or whatever it might be. So I think it's important to understand who will be the team that will be implementing whatever it is you might be strategizing about. And your strategy will change depending on what your resources are. So if you have your own devs in-house, for instance, then you can say, okay, we can lean into that part of the strategy. If you don't have your own devs in-house and there's a, like, let's say it costs you money to get dev things implemented, and let's say there's a certain budget on that, and other people are also in that queue, which is the thing that happens, then it might be the case that, you know, maybe we'll put 10% of the strategy towards those sorts of implementations and things like that. So I would look at whoever might be directly involved with the strategy and find out what resources they have, both monetarily, with regards to time, with regards to knowledge, because it might be that you have lots of people who are like exec level and they've got lots of time and they've got lots of enthusiasm, but maybe they're not super skilled yet. And you might be like, okay, well, we can do a lot of tasks in bulk. But you know, strategically we can maybe do a few here and like more, like maybe we can have more things that are have like a single strategic objective implemented en masse because we have that manpower. But if you have fewer people in a different way, then you might want to implement that differently. But certainly the understanding how many people and how much time you have and how much resource you have and whether or not you've got certain tools is really, really important.
And I'm going to ask a follow-up question to Dre, actually. So in relation to that, Dre, so if you've got someone in charge of the strategy, someone who owns the strategy within a large brand, but they traditionally haven't had that much involvement in SEO, and perhaps when you approach them, they say, look, I'm just happy for SEO to do their own thing. You know, I'm too busy focusing on this and this and that. You know, you just do what you want. What do you say to them to actually get a better relationship with them and get SEO further up the table in terms of the conversation?
Yeah, it's definitely all about attribution. You have to making sure analyzing and seeing how SEO can possibly save the company, how much SEO can bring to the company. One thing where like a lot of my counterpart, let's say someone in paid search, would also get tons of budget, gets all the attention and stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, you know what? We can save more money or save some money if you get ranking organically for these things. So being able to show these metrics of the what you can save and how much you can spend is very, very important. That's one thing you should be able to do, but also education. Education is very, very important. This is something where with the big organizations, like you mentioned, like, oh, just do your own thing. Let them know how important it is. Let them know how much impact it will make for the company. I mean, for like large companies, like if you don't have the right attribution in place, if you do, you can show like how much like SEO can bring to the company. Like let's say for a company like Workday, back in 2021, organic search was attributed for over 500 million revenue. We could only do that when we had the right marketing ops teams putting in place like stats like for Adobe Analytics or Visible and stuff like that. Being able to put the right analytics and the tech stack for your company to show up leadership and just to show your work is very, very important.
Maria, either in your current company or perhaps a previous company, what job titles outside of marketing do you typically seek out to try and get on board with your SEO strategy?
Right. Well, first of all, like Crystal said, first we need to start from the center back to out. Who are you going to report? And then from there, for example, head of marketing, and then from there, CMO, all of these people, decision makers who are involved in the wider strategy, and then identify the objectives. For that is in a big organization. In a smaller one, in my previous job was in a smaller agency as well with small businesses. So in there, it was basically the head of development, the CEO, SEO, and the teams. So the people I would be having conversations in that instance would be the head of development because of building relationship with him, and essentially with CEO as well, because he was in charge of the spend, the budgets, and everything. So it's building a relationship with this key decision makers in the organization, whether it's small or large. And so in order to be able to explain when you have to make changes on a website or the strategy that involve a lot of budget, money, or time, and that perhaps if we come as CEOs full of jargon, with a big number saying we need to do this change and it's going to cost X amount because X, Y, Z, and full of jargon, they're just gonna go and like, no, like absolutely no. Let's prioritize whatever else. Let's give money to pay to marketing and pay teams and keep going that way. So for me, I would say marketing, CMO, development or chief architect, whatever the name of the obviously the team of developers, engineers in your agency or in your business, build relationships with them, because
I love that.
Yes, and by this I don't mean, for example, pop in with developers now and then and give them a box of donuts. That's patronizing. It's just no. It's just coming. Hey, how you doing? Like every team is different. For example, developers, whether it's a small agency, big one, in-house, whatever part in the world, developers tend to be more introspective, more like to themselves. Whereas marketing and PR, they are so extroverted and extrovert and all of that. So it's just building relationships with these people, because essentially you come in here with a strategy, with an analysis, and whatever priorities they take on, they're going to have an impact on revenue. They're going to have an impact on spend for marketing as well. If we manage, for example, to implement big changes that essentially are going to increase organic traffic, revenue, direct traffic, could have an impact in direct, etc., etc. That means that, for example, for marketing could mean in future months or weeks, a diminution in spend perhaps for them, because other free channels are kicking off, etc. So it is, I think everything is all about building relationships with the right people in every department, not the right people, decision makers, with everyone. Because you can have a great relationship with the head of marketing, but the person that you're dealing with every day, you might be having a clash. So it is just building relationships with everyone. And yeah.
I mean, the reason I love your mention of head of development is that role is absolutely key as to whether or not you can implement what you want to implement at the end of the day. You know, if you come up with your strategy, if you come up with your list of things that you want to do, what's the point in coming up with that if you haven't actually determined if it's feasible to implement what you want to do fairly quickly? So you have a general conversation with the head of development to begin with about how quickly you can implement what you may want to do. You can talk about the kind of things that you may want to do. You're not asking them to commit to certain things, but if you get an idea of timelines and how busy their team is likely to be and how much resource they're likely to be able to provide you with, then you'll be able to actually use that to shape your strategy.
Yeah, it's basically just making a correlation between implementation, the benefits it could have, and revenue, and all of that. And that's one part that's engineering. For example, marketing, having a close relationship with them, because they have tons of keywords they work with that you can use in SEO, and equally for them. So yeah, and PR, obviously, because the work they do, if you have a PR department, the work they do obviously is going to have a significant impact in organic as well. So
wonderful. Slight echo coming in there. Sorry, when Maria was talking there. If someone's not talking, if you could possibly just mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you. Let's move on to the role that SEO has with specific marketing departments, and what roles are probably key moving forward in 2023 in terms of how that SEO strategy relates to other marketing channels. So Crystal, what other areas of marketing are absolutely key to SEO in 2023?
I've been speaking about this quite a lot since writing SEO in October. But in my opinion, and I'm going to quote myself again. In my opinion, like if you're an SEO, you're like Simba on the mountain. Everything the light touches is SEO. I think Google is making sure that the SERP is incredibly full and rich of multimedia experiences. So while I don't necessarily think that you should be co-opting what your social media team are doing, for instance, the activity that happens on social media will impact your SEO activity. So it's important to be aware and to work strategically with that team, to distribute your content, to push forward with different keywords, to get different links more visible. So I talk a lot about how, like, for instance, if you share something, if you share a link on Twitter and you're posting regularly on Twitter, then if somebody clicks the link from the Google SERP, which will show your Twitter profile and will show your Twitter posts, they click that link, that counts as organic. This is something that is interesting and is useful, particularly when Google needs so many more cues to understand whether or not they should or should not index a piece of content. So this is something that can help with a lot. Also, Google recently, there was an interesting post on Search Engine Journal that was talking about how Google understands whether or not content is made by AI. And we've all seen ChatGPT all over everyone's internet feeds. And in that document, they were talking about media, multimedia, and including video as being one of the cues that they use to understand whether or not a content was created by an actual human being. And then we all know that you can also do AI with video, but they mentioned specifically video and things as a cue, because you have to verify a YouTube account and blah 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 and all that sort of stuff. So I think that these things are important. And also, we all know that EAT is important. So that all contributes. So if you have, for instance, content that's written by people who have verified social media profiles, for instance, then that will impact how Google understands your content and how Google recognizes your content overall. So I think that all the channels are important, and which ones you prioritize will have to do with what resource you have, and where your expertise lies. So, for instance, like you might look around and say, "Oh, TikTok is where I should go," but you might not necessarily have the resources for TikTok just yet. If that's the case, then maybe that's a lower priority, or maybe that's a more long-term priority for you, than not. Then maybe say LinkedIn, which you might already have set up. So I think that in my experience and in my understanding of the way things are going with SEO in the future and for 2023, because I think certainly within the last month, GPT has like rocked the world. So who knows where we'll be in a year from now. But I think that those things will be something that we should be thinking strategically about and planning accordingly.
So Dre, Crystal's initial card was social media. Second card was multimedia, specifically video. What card could you use to raise those two marketing channels?
Well, the conversations you should have with marketing leaders is definitely like OKRs. There's something called OKRs that bigger companies call objectives, key results. And this is where you can get SEO more visible with other teams, as sharing key results with other teams, like getting shared results. And this is something that you can work with the product marketing team, with the content marketing team, the dev team. Understanding the processes within these teams is also very important. Let's say like understanding the sprint schedule of dev teams and understanding how you have to present your user story for these dev teams is very, very important. The conversation you should learn and get started before you get your strategy going. I mean, even on top of that, like you have the multimedia teams, you have the video teams, but then again, you can show them, again, I'm all about data. I'm being able to show how much impact, like their work does, because being able to show them, give them feedback on how like they share something, how much views or how their video is ranking, being able to have that loop of feedback of what your other teams are doing will just empower you to become better SEO and, someone that they want to talk to.
Are you? Sorry, Crystal.
I was just gonna say, I was like, amen. Like I just like the loop of that, and like, yeah, the ranking of the content that they're doing on the thing and how it affects all of that is like super valuable. Anyway, yes.
Maria, what marketing departments, specific channels within marketing do you seek out initially?
For design of the strategy?
Yeah, in terms of what is most likely to be something that you will have a close relationship with in 2023 as part of your SEO strategy. So what marketing channels, what marketing teams do you want to build close relationships with and understand what they want to do?
Well, the channels I work with on a daily basis are paid media, we work together because especially I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say
Go
it
for it.
anyway. Um, we have we launched a global website a year ago, and as part of that, we work on paid campaigns around the world. Obviously, since I'm Mexican and I know the Mexican market, I know the niche, like I know the palm of my hand. Um, we've been running a few experiments with translation, localization. Not only that, we believe that when we launch content abroad, so it's important translation and localization. We ran some incredibly successful tests where, apart from localization, we also match the content to linguistic phenomena. One, excuse me, one very common in Mexico is Spanglish, where in the north, and that affects the way people search and how some brands present the categories and products, such as Sarah, for example, mixes Spanish and English for the website, how it appears in the north of Mexico versus how it appears in the south. So we adapt the way people search, which can be Spanish and English in one sentence in the north of Mexico, to the content perhaps of some of the ads. And the engagement we've had has been significantly higher, like we're talking significantly higher in terms of engagement, converting, and leads, and essentially revenue from paid, direct, and organic, than if we just go the route translation, localization. We've been matching translation, we've done translation, localization, and adapting to linguistic phenomena and adapting to intent and the way people search, depending as well where these ads are going to be shown as well. If it's in Mexico, is that is we can combine Spanish and English. If it's perhaps in Panama or down more down to South America, is different. Versus Spain. Spain is a particular one where no English, no Anglicisms whatsoever in their content. Even though that is fashion and you have the Anglicism or Anglicism here and there, it's just Spanish. So I work very closely with paid media. I work with content. I work with PR. I work with engineering. But in marketing, is paid media, is email, is affiliates, is social media as well, because as well. Depending on our target audience, when we launch globally, some people perhaps engage just depending the social media main channels might differ than how, for example, in South America than what they use in the UK. For example, in Mexico, we would have thought, well, TikTok is where people goes to find to be influenced, and we should invest all in TikTok. It's still quite in its infancy, TikTok in Mexico, for to make purchasing decisions, to get influences more. Perhaps for some niches like fashion, perhaps for florists, perhaps for gifts, is still Instagram, Facebook. TikTok is growing, but whereas in the UK and some parts of Europe, it could be TikTok. So yeah, it's interesting to work with all of these departments and matching, matching intent with the content they're looking to use, and doing experiments, because also we have the freedom to do these experiments. Not many people are fortunate to have that freedom to run and do whatever.
I think also that point, it's the point you were making about the northern Mexico and the Spanglish or whatever, because that I think there's that you probably would have crossed over to some audiences that are also in the US as well, in the south of the US. So
Exactly.
I think it's really interesting that that ties in with your earlier point about trust, because you said, I'm from Mexico, I know it, and so you would have said, I know this, and they would have trusted you with this money about this thing that you know.
It's knowing not only, I'm very fortunate to be where I am, because it's the first job where since the interview, I knew the niche, but like that, like, because I consume fashion since I was a child. I know trends, I know all sorts of scandals within the fashion industry. Ask me something, I know it.
Okay.
So what is to come, I know it as well.
Okay.
But so on top of that is knowing your own people as well, like in Mexico, how they behave wherever they go. In Mexico, wherever they are in the south of the US or in Europe, different behaviors. So along with that SEO, you attach SEO to it. So I'm like, yeah.
And that ties into
it's-
Andre.
Hmm.
Ties into Andre's point about knowing your audience as well.
Yes, yeah, because knowing the niche as well, it takes you to think, oh, I know who the competitors are. I know I know where you're going, and I know what is going to work in terms of products in for example, in Scandinavia, which collection is going to be more successful in Scandinavia than it's going to be in Mexico. If you know your niche, you're going to know what your target audience wants. If you're launching globally, for example, if you are to launch 2 collections, the neutral and the, let's say, the rainbow collection, the rainbow collection is going to be far more successful in London, obviously, and for example, in Africa and in South America, because in Africa and South America, it's all about color, vibrancy, textures, whereas perhaps in Scandinavia, it's more about neutral colors, monochromatic stuff. So perhaps the neutral timeless collection is going to be more successful over there than it is in South America. But I can talk tons about it. But yeah,
Look,
and that's why I'm saying knowing the niche.
Let's take everything that you've shared so far. You've offered some great, very specific tips there. You know, Crystal, love you talking about actually you can use video to demonstrate the fact that you're not AI, you're not a bot, you're a real person. You know, Maria, you were sharing some wonderful tips and the fact that you can learn from PPC. You can be very niche with your understanding of your audience based upon what you can learn from PPC there as well. You know, Dre sharing some great things about audiences as well. So what can we do with everything that we've learned? What can we do with the conversations that we've had with everyone internally, with the channels that we want to interact with in 2023? How does all that actually come together and actually fit together with what you want to do in terms of SEO to create an SEO strategy? So Crystal, what does an SEO strategy look like in 2023?
So it's interesting because at the beginning of the session, you said, oh, SEOs think a lot about tactics and we need to think more about strategy. In my opinion, I think that the tactics are always there, but I think it's like how you use them. So I think that it's a question of, if you think about it, somebody playing a beautiful, I don't know, a beautiful piece on a piano, right? They're all hitting notes. They're all playing, you know, things that are within the same scale or whatever. But like, you know, if somebody puts together a sonata, they've moved with intent. So basically you're taking your tactics and you're putting them all together so that you move everything in one direction. And sometimes when you do the strategy when you present your strategy, it seems very grand and very big or whatever. But then when you get into the day-to-day, you're like, okay, so what we need to do actually is fix all of those images. And we need to fix all of this meta description, all of these meta descriptions. We need to fix all of the schema. We need to fix all of this janky code. Like we need to fix all of that sort of stuff. And the day-to-day stuff maybe isn't all that's super exciting, but from your strategic eye view, you can see that all of these things are all pieces of the puzzle that fit into your overall strategy. So I think I sometimes like to think of it as like a soap opera. So in a soap opera, there's always a long tail story. Like there's always like who was the man in the tower at the end of the road or something, and that they'll give you a little piece of the puzzle of that all the way along the season or whatever. But each week or each month something happens along the way. So there'll be a little story that happens along the way, and they all contribute and all build up to the whole thing overall. So I think it's important to think that they don't get overwhelmed and think that you have to do everything all at once. All of these little pieces all are part of your strategy. So I think that once you get your strategy, break it up into something manageable, because it's no good just having like, some big grand plans if you don't have any sort of ways of implementing them. And I think that before you lay out your strategy, prioritize. Whenever I've written strategies for other clients and things, you know, people always roll their eyes about the traffic light system, but it's really useful. So I'll say like, so, and it's just really useful. And you can say, time, and I'll say this takes this much time, and this I think might be this much effort, or this is this important. So you can say this is going to take like 10 minutes. It's not that important, but it'll take you 10 minutes, and it'll be like, and it'll help. Since like people will be like, yeah, I'll do that. That'll take me 10 minutes, whatever. And if it's something that's going to take you 3 months, if it's going to take you 6 months, then you can start laying the groundwork for that, so that you can move it forward. And if you could say this is going to take us 6 months and it's not going to have that big of an impact, then that can be a like, if somebody gets to it kind of job, and part of the strategy. So I think that it's important to parse it up based on your priorities, based on your resources, and to move forward in that way, and to use the tactics strategically.
Dre, how long should an SEO strategy be for? What kind of time scale are we talking about here?
I go, I do from yearly and quarterly. I mean, this is how I break it up. Of all the things we do here, I usually break it up on understanding, assessing, and then optimizing. So you kind of got those 3 pillars when you kind of break out your strategy. So like we talked about earlier here, understanding the audience, understanding the product, and making sure you put this in a nice presentation and present it. That's one keyword that Crystal mentioned, is like present your presentation. If you just show your manager, it may not go anywhere, but so take the initiative to present your strategy to all the stakeholders. Like when you have your understanding, like that's where you can get some feedback on whether you're understanding the product correctly, if you're understanding the audience correctly, and then assessing what's already out there. Talk to your content marketing teams, understanding what content's already out there, seeing what their OKRs are, what people's budgets are, and making sure you have that, and being able to understand that you guys are going after the same KPIs, and then of course optimizing. Going out and just executing on what you have going on. So understanding, assessing, optimizing, kind of break up in those 3. Do it quarterly, present yearly again, but you have to present. So don't just show your manager, share it out to the team, but make an initiative to book those meetings with all the leaders to present your strategy throughout the company.
Maria, what does, in your opinion, an SEO strategy look like, and how do you measure success?
Well, an SEO strategy would look for me is a combination of an assessment of what happened the previous year, or for example, if you're new in a company, in an agency, and you ask for a strategy, first of all, have a look at an existing SEO audit or what has been done, then assess, and then from there, you make a strategy that is form of, for example, I'm just thinking like bullet pointy in that's how it's in my brain. So you start with an introduction, assessment of traffic, assessment of all of the different elements, and then you move on to a document where you say, okay, based on what work or what is going on, or then we're going to move on to this plan, which is actually the strategy, which is divided by I've got here a little, it differs from this is just a sample I created. That doesn't mean is what I use at work. Obviously, it's a big organization, but you could do something like the strategy that is composed by your objective, right? What is it that you're looking to increase? And in every component of SEO, technical, content, links, what is it that you're looking to increase? What is it that you are looking to increase in terms of SEO to the wider objectives, right? Increase revenue from organic, increase traffic, attract different people, or increase traffic in a specific zone, whatever your objective is. And then from the objective, then you move to you divide the objectives into as many bullet points as you can. Then from there, you move to the strategy. Exactly what is the strategy, your plan of action to get to that, to achieve that objective. Strategy, plan of action. And then from the plan of action or the strategy, you move to the deliverable or tactic. Tactic and strategy, not the same thing. The tactic is part of the strategy, right? It's like a deliverable. For example, my strategy, my plan of action for that objective is, let's say, I don't know, whatever. This is my plan of action. So within that plan of action, perhaps link building and within link building, this tactic is what I'm going to use this deliverable is what I'm going to use in my strategy that is going to contribute towards my objective and then part of the plan. So I can put on Twitter all of these little thoughts, and also checking your strategy, not getting carried away and planning 5, 10 years, like some people do, ahead. Things change. I mean, not many people knew a year ago about ChatGPT, which is a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not replacing us as SEOs. TikTok is not replacing Google. No, it's just things change, right? So have your strategy, right, for a year or 2 years tops, and then revisit that strategy every 6 months or every 3 months, because things might change, right? The Google algorithm might change and might have a change that it means that maybe your work as a SEO might change, not your rankings, your work as a SEO. GTP appears, then maybe whatever, right? So have your strategy for a year, 2 years, and revise it with your team or your wider team every 3 to 6 months. So
Lovely. Okay, and you kind of preempted what's going to be my last quick question there, Maria, and that is stick or twist, because you kind of said that an overarching strategy should be a year, perhaps 2 years long in terms of what you want to achieve long term, but you also said review what you're doing every 3 to 6 months or so. So my question was going to be, if a new technology comes along, like ChatGPT or something else, should you perhaps suddenly change and decide to do something entirely differently, or should you definitely stick for at least 3 months or 6 months and see through what you're doing? So, Crystal first, are you a stick or twist person?
I don't think anyone said it yet, so I'm gonna drop the "it depends" bomb. Andre, I don't know if you've got your. I know, I knew you were gonna come in. I knew you were gonna come in, so I'm gonna do it. Whatever, I've done it. I'm gonna do it. Okay, because I've definitely had it before, where sometimes you have to, like sometimes you have to twist, like they make you. So I've had it before where you know Google changes the SERP, and then like you have to twist. You like because because people are like, our traffic's gone, like their traffic's gone, the traffic's changed. What is going on? We have to do something. So you have to change your tag, or your competitor does something you didn't expect, or maybe there's Maria mentioned a fashion drama, so maybe there's some drama that's happened somewhere, or maybe there's some good drama that's happened somewhere. You got some fantastic coverage somewhere, and suddenly you're viral, and you're like, okay, well, we should do something about this now. And so you can't just go, well, I've got my deliverables and I've got my strategy and I should take off the no. Like, the internet is a living, breathing thing. So, you have to respond. Sometimes you have to respond. At the same time, you should not panic. So when the helpful content update came along, lots of people were like, oh, I should delete all of my terrible. It's like, do you need to? Was it that bad before? I'm not sure, maybe. And people think that, that they should start panicking straight away after an algorithm changes, but sometimes algorithms change back. So if you panic straight away, then you're not working with all of the data that you could be using to make those accurate decisions. Andres talked loads about data today, and that is absolutely your friend. So I think it depends again on what your overall strategic objectives are. I know. Oh, don't no!
I didn't offended you.
The same depends.
So it's the second one of the year.
Yeah. So I think, so keep your overall objectives in mind. Your North Star is like, let's say your North Star is we want to be the leader in this market, for instance. And so, you want to think what will help us do that more if we need to twist this way. And I've also had with clients where they were just very dynamic, and I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to plan our strategy for the next 3 months. And they'd be like, yeah, we changed everything last week. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll replan again. And then they change. And then certainly during COVID, if you had any businesses that were like open, close, open, close, open, close, you had to change your strategy all the time. And so sometimes I for this particular one, I was just like, I'm not, my strategy is to like, we have a general North Star, and I have a list of things that I think will get us there eventually. And we will work towards that. But also I'm going to understand that this is a dynamic thing, and that we need to bear that in mind. And so that is, I don't recommend that for everyone, but for this particular one, it was better than spending like hours and hours planning again and again and again and again and again, and not being able to implement things. So yeah, there you go.
Right.
It depends.
Third one.
Trey, stick or twist, or should you stick with a strategy for a minimum of 3 months?
I'm a sticker. Coming from an enterprise SEO, I mean, this is something where it's like, it's things get done really, really slow. And when you plan, you're planning maybe 6 months in advance, maybe like for the next year. I mean, you're mid-year, so like, this is something where you stick. And then if your company is a huge name, big brand, and you don't have to worry about like any algorithm updates, it's like, and you're following best practices, sticking to the original plan, to the overall company goals is something that I've always been accustomed to.
And Maria, are you a sticker or
Well,
it depends? Or
again, I hate to say what it is. I'm going to drop the fourth one. It depends as well. If you don't have, no, let me tell you why. Because in a niche as ever changing and as dramatic, as beautiful as fashion is, we need to change. Depending, things might change from collection to collection, from season to season. We are very careful with our brand. I love my brand, the brand I work for. But imagine how it went for someone like Balenciaga. You know, we all know Balenciaga that started with being different, and I was kind of loving it. And then suddenly they decided it's a good idea to have this campaign that destroyed them. So how do you recover from that? How from the campaign, for those who don't know, Balenciaga, who decided in the latest campaign in November to launch a handbag, which was a teddy bear covered in bondage. And they thought it was a good idea to have children in beds with that object, like bondage object in their hands. So plus some pedophilia documents out there. It was just like terrible. How does a fashion brand recover from that? Their sales went plummeted in 3 weeks, like 60%. This is data I read somewhere on Twitter from a known source. And so it's like, if there isn't, I would say, in terms of the strategy, if there isn't anything, an external factor that you have no control of, such as COVID, scandals, or a viral campaign, or stuff like that, good or bad, any change that could be good or could be bad, then stick every 3 months kind of checking, in case you might need to make a change in 6 months, or you might need to adapt something else, a tactic that perhaps, I'm thinking small businesses, okay, you're working with certain local influencers, okay, that is working for you. Maybe we might need to add a little bit more on the second half of the year of the strategy, more of that. We might need maybe this type of content in the newsletter worked better for this other florists, let's say. I used to work with florists in the past. Okay, well, maybe this is working for you. Let's maybe increase more of that and remove less of that. Perhaps something that is not working. Maybe someone got really excited and invested a lot in TikTok. It didn't work. Well, let's go back to Instagram. So it's revising, it's checking your revenue, your etc., and see what is working within 3 months. And so that can give us a picture of what to change by the second half of the year in your strategy. So.
And I think you can definitely build in those tests as well. You can say, we're going to test this for this long and see if this works. And if it does, we will keep going. And if it does not, then we won't.
Exactly. Another thing super important as well is, like, if you have the chance, like in my case, to test and make changes, then don't make a change just because. Test all the time. Test. One thing I'm testing at the moment with another group of friends, this is outside work. We have a website, and it was a niche website just for fun. And I noticed something. It's slightly premature, but I'm just going to say it anyway. So the content that is being written by hand, by regular, normal human writers by hand and all of that, we notice that it's indexed normally within 1 week, with 1 day, 2-3 days, 1 week tops. The pieces of content that we injected, written with ChatGPT, are not being indexed yet. It's been like a week or so. We started this project in November as a test, and we are like,
Interesting.
So maybe Google is already like, we're continuing to do this because we have 3 writers that are writing content like they normally do, and then we inject as well. We inject 3 pieces of content written by a content writer. we also inject three pieces of content written with using ChatGPT. The other written by humans are indexed as per normal, like it always does the content. But the other ones start to being indexed. Now they're starting taking a week, and now it's been 3 weeks of one piece of content that we published just before Christmas. Well, like not before Christmas, like the one before Christmas, it just hasn't been indexed. It's New Year, and so we are thinking maybe Google is already being able to. I don't know. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know.
On that bombshell, I think we have to say to be continued. We should have made this a 2-hour-long episode. It could have been at least that, if not more. Chat GTP is certainly something we're going to dive into more in the future as well. I want to ask you follow-up questions or discuss things like how do you actually detect if your outsourced content writer is using Chat GTP or not, if that's the case. But let's leave that thought out there. And I just want to say, I've been your host, David Bain. You've been listening to episode 36 of the Majestic SEO podcast, starring Crystal Carter. Crystal, where can the listener find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter for the moment, most actively at Crystal on the web. I'm also on LinkedIn. I also have a Mastodon account, which I need to have another go at because there's a really good community there. So yeah, you can find me. I think I'm Crystal on the web at Mastodon as well.
Wonderful stuff. And also, Dre, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Paul Andre. You can find me on Twitter at Paul Andre. And of course, every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube, SEO Video Show.
Pew, pew, pew.
And Maria, thanks so much for joining us as well. Where can people find you?
On Twitter, mainly, is Maria_Amelie. Yeah, I'm there most of the sorry, at the moment, excuse me. I protected my tweets because superstition. I have the first week, I just don't interact socially. It's just superstition, first week of the year. But then I will unlock my tweets eventually. But just 1 week a year, only one. It should be more. Perhaps I should be locked for 6 months. But 1 week a year, I just don't tweet. I miss that week.
Well, thank you so much for joining us live. If you watched live, if you want to join us live next time, sign up at majestic.com/webinars. You can see what's coming and hopefully you can interact a little bit more in future episodes. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, I'm going to have to try and figure...
Oh, you cut it off already?
No, I haven't. The thing is, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if I can switch us off.
Oh.
Because according to the software, we're not live. So how can I actually take us from being live if we're not live? So I will try and...
Computers have taken over already. Look
it looks like done. It's, you know, all I can do is click go live, which is a bit random, which is good. So I think everyone's going to have to just leave. This is still live at the moment. And then we're going to be able to hopefully see what happens on YouTube once everyone goes.
You know, gotta go home.
Be live when no one's there. We'll see. Okay.
All right, then.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you
David.
very
Bye,
much.
Crystal. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.